The first time I opened a cabinet of a reef aquarium, I thought, what the hell is all this?
Today we are visiting one of Germany's most famous aquarist YouTubers. Hello and welcome to Sea Friendly Reef and to a new video here on this little channel. As you can see, we are here at a very special location because today we are visiting one of Germany's most famous aquarist YouTubers, Mr. Aqua owner in person. Thank you for having us today.
Sure.
You started YouTube round about 6 to 7 years ago, and
yeah, so 6 years.
So after about 4 years you decided to bring the saltwater content next to your freshwater and aquascaping stuff. What was the reason behind that? We often see that also on our channel here, people starting with freshwater. I think this is the typical way to start into the whole hobby.
Honestly, I must say that for me it was mainly something that I promised my viewers because it was like a special for the 40k subscriber special.
Ah, okay.
And people said, well, you should do a biotope aquarium, and I don't really like biotope aquariums.
But
so
you had some.
I had some. I did it later then, yeah. For the saltwater, it was like the same. People say, well, you're doing so much freshwater, why don't you do some reef stuff, some saltwater stuff? And I personally wasn't sure about if I should do this and how it would feel for me. So I started with very little knowledge, maybe none. And and so it was a whole new world for me, to be honest. You think you have a feel for aquariums when you do it several years. But with saltwater, there are so many different parameters that you don't have in a freshwater aquarium that are necessary for the saltwater aquarium that I didn't know about.
Just 1 second, how long did you do the freshwater hobby before?
Before I started saltwater, maybe 10 years freshwater, so now about 12, 13 years freshwater. And I mean, for the YouTube channel, I get new freshwater aquariums very often. So my freshwater aquariums are like maybe 9 months, maybe 12 months, and then I do new ones. So I have experience in building them, in seeing how they evolve, and what parameters are necessary to
also
make them evolve.
Handling problems.
Yes.
So it wasn't that case that you have a freshwater aquarium for 10 years, had no problems with it, and just keep some fish. So you are into the topic in a very intensive way.
Yeah, that was the main reason why I decided to try. I asked people beforehand if it is possible, and they said, yeah, maybe it could be done. But for me, it was interesting if I could do a saltwater aquarium the way I do a freshwater aquarium.
Okay, this is an aquascape. I see it is freshwater.
Yes.
So this is your main focus about the last 7 years.
Yep.
You are building aquascapes in different ways. If we just look at the plants and at the fish you are using here, what is the main difference to a freshwater aquarium regarding to the equipment?
First of all, of course, the light. It's not blue.
Yeah.
It's a different light color scheme. It's a different light temperature. Actually, it's nearly as bright as you would get it for a reef tech, especially in aquascaping, because we have plants that are very light hungry and you need high intensity lights for that. On the other hand, you have one inflow, one outflow just for the filter. You have no like flow pumps or anything else.
Yeah.
The filter is responsible for the flow as well.
So you also do not have a lot of water movement here.
No, not really. I mean, this is a pretty strong filter in air quotes for this tank size already, but you don't need that flow actually. The main focus of the flow is to transport the nutrients to the plants and to transport the waste inside the filter.
So if we are taking a look to the other side, we see a tank with less plants than the other one.
Yeah.
So do you have some problems with integrating not that much plants into an aquarium? Just like in reef aquarists, you need the corals for keeping out some nutrients out of the water. Is it the same in freshwater?
It is more or less the same. You have other nutrients that the plants take up, but plant mass is also a good indicator to avoid algae, because algae take up the same nutrients as those higher plants. You call them higher plants. If you have a large amount of plants, like in this bigger aquarium, you don't have the risk of getting so much algae, because you have to supplement for the plants. You have to fertilize them. And the fertilizer is also good for the algae. So you have to keep this balance, that you fertilize just enough for all those plants to take up these nutrients, so that no nutrients are left over for the algae.
Okay.
And this is a bit harder with a plant with less plant mass, because then you have to fertilize less. And in my opinion, fertilizing less is always a little bit harder, because you have smaller amounts that you have to try out and that you have to balance. So like in my freshwater aquariums, I do weekly water changes, and I supplement only the things the plants need.
What for an amount of water change are you doing?
Like 50 to 60%.
Yeah,
every week.
Do not do this in salt water. That's the difference. Yeah.
But I thought, if I want to make my audience aware of saltwater, I mean, it was a freshwater channel. When I started with saltwater, I didn't know what would happen. Will people like it? Won't they like it? I don't know. And so for me, it was like interesting. Can I get a saltwater aquarium with the way my audience already knows how to feel an aquarium, with water changes, with like weekly maintenance sessions, something like that, but without a whole lot of technical elements, without dosing pumps, without a sump.
So your first equipment setup was skimmer, lighting, and flow pumps.
Yeah, right. And no sump, no supplements, no like KH supplements or something. And I tried if it can be done. If you do water changes with fresh salt water, can you get enough nutrients and enough alkalinity into the water to make it work? And it did okay, but not the way someone that likes saltwater aquariums would say that's a nice saltwater aquarium.
How much time did it take that you mentioned that it maybe is not the perfect way of keeping an aquarium the way you did it at that time?
I think the main difference was that I needed to learn about all the elements that are necessary in salt water itself. So like all these trace elements that you haven't heard about if you're doing freshwater. We don't know about iodine. We don't know about barium, strontium. Sure, it is somewhere in freshwater,
but it's
not important. It's not important
in that way. Yeah.
You don't know about it. On the other hand, something like phosphates, nitrates, we have fairly high amounts in freshwater because the plants need it. We have nitrates like 30-40 milligrams. Yeah. We have phosphates like 1 to 2 milligrams. Yeah. And for the saltwater, I needed to learn that that's something that you don't really want to have. And that other things are important, that you need a constant source of alkalinity. In a freshwater tank, you set your alkalinity. Mostly it's set through the stones you use, and then it's set. It's not getting used up. Yeah. So you don't have to push it back. That's something in the reef tank it's completely new in the way you have to care for a tank.
A huge difference I also see is in freshwater, people are using the equipment as a decoration tool. So you nearly don't have that in reef aquariums. So that's the reason why you have got those huge cabinets to hide all that stuff. But I think that looks really crazy, just like a laboratory.
I like doing this kind of stuff because I like technical stuff as well.
Just like we see here.
I mean, all in general, I like showing off this stuff, but it also helps with maintenance, because I just get to it and I can do everything. So I don't have to crawl down in the sump, in the cabinet, and get everything away from each other. But on the other hand, especially with the external filters, there are not really many filters on the market that you want to show off. This is something special in this case, but to be fair, it's a pretty pricey filter, just for the looks. And if you don't care about the looks, if you have it in the cabinet, you can pay maybe a tenth of this price for a same.
So a huge difference.
Yeah, for a filter that's having the same performance.
Behind you, we have got some smaller, next to all the cool Lego stuff, we have some smaller tanks, which are not already tanks, just looking like small terrariums.
Yeah.
In freshwater, just like in saltwater, you can do some fragging stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
sure,
you cut your plants off, and you can take all these little frags for building some new scapes.
Yeah, and actually most of the plants you use in a freshwater aquarium are actually plants that are living above water as well.
Okay.
So all these kinds, I mean, if you look into it, they are not underwater, but these are plants from my aquarium. So they can live above water if there's enough humidity.
Yeah.
Because in nature, these are plants that are coming from flooding areas. So they are flooded several times of the year, then they're underwater, and they have to adapt to this kind of lifestyle. And the other times of the year, they are above water, and they have to adapt again. And what's interesting about this is that these plants look different when they grow above water. They get different leaves, they get different colors, they get different growth heights. And that's something that you can show off in those little glasses. You see they're pretty moist. Yeah,
because it's a closed system.
Yeah. And then you have something small that's decorative and that don't takes up any maintenance.
So, studio number 2 here, we have a NIOS tank.
Yes.
And this is also the tank I can handle with, because I'm not into the freshwater topic just like you. So what is the idea behind that tank and also behind that scape? Because it's just formed like a little U and laying on the bottom.
In my opinion, when I didn't start with reef aquariums, and I saw reef aquariums somewhere in like shops or in private places. For me, they all look the same. I thought that there's always some kind of blue lighted aquarium with a lot of stones in it and a lot of corals. I didn't know what those corals were, but for me it just looked like, yeah, it's kind of a bluish water tank with a lot of stones in it. So not very diverse. And for me, I am very into design and I'm very into the visual aspect of aquariums. That's why I do aquascaping and not biotope aquaristic, because I think biotopes are mostly ugly. And I want to have something that I like looking at when I get into a room. So I tried doing this with the reef aquarium as well. And to get a more minimalistic scape, to have more room for the fish to swim around it, to see the scape from every side, to have the ability to also clean the scape from every side if I need it, if I want to. So this is more like centered, more like in a freshwater you would say, or you would call this an island scape, because you have a single island surrounded by sand. Sure, it doesn't look like a part from a real reef, but that's not something I wanted. From
all your tanks, what is the tank you are looking at the most?
Also this one.
Also saltwater.
If you look into it, you always see something new, and you can like watch a coral for a few minutes and it does stuff. It gets polyps out, it maybe catches some small, I don't know whatever's living in there. And with a freshwater aquarium, it's more like a living picture. So you know what it would look like, especially with my scapes. When I start the scape, the first day I start the scape, I know what it will look like in 3 months. And then I try to keep this look for another 6 months, another year. That's a plan in aquascaping. And with your saltwater tank, I mean, you get into a shop, you see a new coral, you get that coral and you put it in your tank. So it's always growing, it's always changing.
Yeah, it's not finished.
Yes.
Just like a freshwater aquascape, including all the plants you wanted to have, and after that you cannot bring some other things into it.
I mean, you could, but you don't want to actually. For a freshwater tank, it's like it's finished at day one.
What would you say if someone is watching us who wants to start into the reefer hobby but just had some freshwater experience? What would be the main thing you would give to those persons before maybe buying a reef tank, before starting everything, so that you have got the chance to avoid mistakes?
I think it's mostly like you said it, you have to give yourself time to avoid those mistakes. You have to give yourself the time to learn new terms, to get to know about all these elements, to get to know about how they work together, to learn about flow concepts that in freshwater you mostly don't care about flow concepts. You only have your filter, you don't have flow pumps, something like that. To learn about what filtration means in a saltwater aquarium, because I still get questions asked like, can I use my JBL or Eheim external filter on my saltwater aquarium? You could possibly, but for what? It's a different type of filtration. This is something you really need time for. It's something you don't learn in a few days. So I would really suggest taking that time and not going in a shop, getting the tank, setting it up and learning by doing, because that's what I did. I said it in all my videos. So this is learning by doing, and this is just a kind of documentation, not something that I would suggest you learn from. I can do this because I have the options to get the stuff, to try this out, to also have the community that can help me. But if someone doesn't have this, take a few weeks, maybe a few months to learn all this.
Watching YouTube videos, reading a book, something like that. Or the best way, in my opinion, is always get into contact with people who are doing this hobby already. And just ask them everything you want to know. And maybe focus on their strategy. So I think the best is to get like a teacher into that hobby. And
especially for the technical aspect, because the first time I opened a cabinet of a reef aquarium, I thought, what the hell is all this? Because with my freshwater tanks, I have a CO2 injection system, I have an external filter. That's it.
You've got some UV systems also?
Not really.
Not really, because you are not keeping a lot of fish.
You can have them, but that's that's another part that's integrated into the filter cycle, so it's not really that complicated. But with the sum tank, you have different elements in the sum tank that are standing out, that are bubbling, that are doing stuff, and I think this can be pretty intimidating. If you're seeing it for the first time, you say, oh no, that's way too complicated.
What do you think, what is more expensive, keeping a freshwater tank or a saltwater tank? Interesting question. Saltwater tank, really? Okay.
I mean, especially with aquascaping, you can make this pretty expensive. Especially with the filter I showed you. I mean, that's a small filter that's costing 400 euros. And you have other filters that are costing like 40 to 50 euros. So there is a huge price gap, especially in lighting as well, because you have really high power LED lightings nowadays for the aquascaping world. But anyway, for a saltwater tank, you have so much more equipment that you can use. That's taking up a huge amount of money, and especially the corals are taking up a lot of money. Because I mean, if I get a special Zoanthus or something like that, I can pay hundreds of euros for such a small stone. And in a freshwater scape, if I want to do a carpeting plant that's covering the whole bottom of the tank, it's like, I don't know, 5 to 10 pots. Every pot is 5 euros, and then you have your whole tank covered. If I want to cover the whole tank with Zoanthus, it's hugely expensive.
And you've got some nice food over there.
Yeah, and I actually need to feed.
Yeah, so, perfect, with the sea-friendly reef food.
With a flake mix. I get this always underwater because it's flowing around and it's actually simulating like live food.
But you're happy with it?
Around. Yes, very. I mean, it's the one I use daily. And the other part, the granulated mix. Yeah, that's in my feeding automation for the chromes, because they're like eating all the time. They need to have food all the time. So I have this automated thingy that's pushing up some of those pellets, like I think every 3 hours.
What would be an argument for taking the fear of people who want to start, but they are all seeing those sums and just be afraid of starting the hobby?
I think you have to understand that all this is something that can help you, that you don't have to do so much maintenance in those tanks.
Okay, yeah.
Because in the long run, now that I'm doing a real reef tank with a sump and with all those components, I see that the weekly maintenance is way less than in my freshwater tanks. I have to do nearly nothing with this reef tank. I have to fill up some top-up water.
Yeah.
I have to fill up some reagents for the alkalinity. But that's it. You have to clean the glass.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you really don't do any water change. I mean, you can do them. I don't know when I did my last one. Maybe 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. I don't know.
In my opinion, most important point is just watching.
Yeah.
Just checking, is everything okay? Is a coral burning another one, for example? But
sure, I mean that's something new, because plants don't do this.
Yeah.
So you have two corals next to each other, and the next day the one on the left is white. It's dead. So what happened? Happened there? And then,
why are you killing each other?
Yeah, that's also something that you have to learn about. In my opinion, in a reef tank, everything is hostile.
Yeah.
Everything is trying to kill everything else.
Yeah.
And in freshwater, it's all like peaceful and flowers and stuff, you know. And that's something you have to be aware of.
So we are surrounded by freshwater tanks here. So your reef tank, your main reef tank, is in another studio you have here, but it doesn't depend on the amount of tanks, in my opinion.
No, sure.
What is your emotional focus in Aquarist now, after doing that hobby about 12, 13 years? So freshwater or saltwater? If you can just hold one tank, what would you keep?
Right now it is the reef tank.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Because it's simply more alive. I don't know how to explain it any other way. It's like you look into this and you see that it is living in every aspect. I mean, my plants are living and my fish in my freshwater tanks are living, sure. But you have another connection to them, because the fish in my freshwater tank, and I don't want to diss any fishes or any people who like some fishes in freshwater, sure, but they are there. I see them, I feed them, I think they're pretty to look at, but mostly that's it. And in the saltwater tank, sure, maybe there are some fish that are similar in saltwater, I don't know, but at least for the ones I have, especially for like the clownfishes or something, they have a whole nother level of interaction with each other and with me as a person in front of the aquarium. So
you mean saltwater fish have much more character than a freshwater fish? And depends on the species, always, but...
So you feel more attracted to this tank, because you get more of it. You know what the coral should look like. And with plants, you know this is a healthy plant, this is not a healthy plant.
Yeah.
So if it's yellow, if it has algae on the leaf, you know, okay, that's not okay. It should look pretty green, and that's it. But with the corals, I think, especially something like the Trachyphylias or something like that, they look different every day.
Yeah.
So some days they are almost fallen in, and you think, so, doesn't look very good. But the next day they are all pumped up and nearly twice as big as before. And it's crazy how many variables are there in any single coral. Some of my Trachyphylias have eaten small hermits, small hermit crabs.
Worst case.
They stuck in there, and I thought, who's eating who? Is the hermit crab eating the coral from inside? Oh no, it's not. Some hours later, the empty shell fell out.
You will not have situations like this in freshwater, because you know everything. And you can expect what is going on in that tank. So okay. Guys, if you also have some questions about changing from freshwater to saltwater, feel free to write it down in the comments. Aqua owner, thank you very much for having us today. It was an honor for me. A cat is also going. So guys, feel free to like the video. Feel free to subscribe to that channel. And if you want to, we see us again next week. Have a nice time and bye bye.
Bye bye.